Welcome to Americana Archives. Today's story is in a section entitled Told of the Veterans. The headline is A Lesson in Foraging. It says, the following incident is taken from the diary of a late veteran of the Civil War and who served under command of General Sherman in the Army of the Tennessee. The army was in light marching order, the general commanding limiting himself to a biled shirt and an extra pair of socks. We had marched nearly 50 miles that day and were sore, tired, and hungry when we halted for the night. Our brigade was commanded by Colonel L., a brave soldier and able officer, but who was a great stickler for regulations, etiquette of the corps, etc. After camp was pitched, it was learned that General Ewing, the division commander, had forgotten to issue the usual orders for foraging. In the absence of such orders, Colonel L. refused to let his men go out and borrow supplies from the neighboring farmers. After waiting impatiently for nearly half an hour, Colonel L. sent a lieutenant off to General Ewing's bivouac to ask for the necessary orders. It so happened that General Sherman had decided to make his headquarters with General Ewing that night, and was seated in the tent, writing dispatches with the lid of an old cracker box for a desk, and spitter and candle held in his left hand, when the lieutenant entered and delivered his message to General Ewing. He was interrupted by General Sherman. "What's that, young man? Where are you from?" "Colonel L's brigade, sir," replied the lieutenant. "What? Colonel L's? Colonel John L's? And do you mean to say he doesn't know how to forage? That's mighty strange, and you go right back, young man, and tell him I said so. A man that's been in the army so long as he has, and doesn't know how to forage?" And General Sherman shrugged his shoulders disgustedly. Next day, as the column was trudging along, General Sherman rode by our brigade and shouted a cheery good morning. Colonel L., who was still smarting under the rebuke from the general sent by the lieutenant, saluted gravely. "I say, L.," said General Sherman, reining in his horse, "that was a funny message you sent me last night." "I did not have the honor of sending you any message," said the colonel somewhat stiffly. "The division commander failed to issue foraging orders, and I was obliged to address him on the subject." "Oh, that was it?" chuckled the general. "Well, it's all right now. I hope the boys got enough to eat." "Yes, General, we know how to forage." Several days later, General Sherman sent for Colonel L. to give him some instructions, which he delivered in a somewhat harsh manner. The colonel saluted and was about to retire when Sherman halted him. "I must ask your pardon, Colonel, for speaking so abruptly, but the fact is, we were on the march before daybreak this morning, and all I've had to eat since then was a little cold bacon and hardtack. Back on the road this afternoon, I bought a ham and expected to have a nice supper, but some of those confounded boys have stolen it. Just think of that, and forget my rudeness, won't you?" As the colonel walked back to his brigade, he passed our regiment, and was continuing with the cheery "Good night, boys," when he stopped and began to sniff. Something good was cooking. Instantly, a dozen invitations were hurled at him to sit down and have something to eat. "No thank you, boys." But sniffing again, "Where did you get that ham?" "Drew it from the commissary, sir." The colonel repressed a smile and said sternly, "Well, I'll let it pass this time, but if you ever draw another ham that way, I'll have you drummed out of the regiment." "Why, Colonel," drawled one of the boys, "you see we have just learned how to forage." This story came from the great state of Nebraska, being reported in the Loup City Northwestern of January 11th, 1906. Thank you for joining us today. If you want to continue to uncover all of America's lost and forgotten history, then remember before you leave to hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and remember to like and comment below. And we will see you next time on Americana Archives.